man who was the chief official of the island named Publius. His name actually means popular. And there's a pretty good reason why this guy, that's a great name for this guy, because he was the leader of this kind, benevolent island. So it speaks very highly of his leadership that this island has this kind of an attitude. And he opens his home, opens his estate, demonstrated hospitality. I mean, ladies, just imagine that your husband brings home 276 friends from work without letting you know. And they're a mess. And let's say they're not from work, but he just, the cruise ship down at Nawiliwili sunk. There's only 276, and no one would take them home. And you had such a benevolent heart, and you brought them home, and they were just a mess. They're wet. They don't have any clothes. Everything went glug, glug to the bottom. And no one was going to take care of them. And you ferried him up to the house, and you got your friends to ferry him up there, and you knocked on the door and say, honey, I got a surprise for you. And you unload 276 guys. You've got to feed them. You have to house them. You have to have bedding for them. You've got to provide for these guys, not for a meal, not for a night, but for 3 days. Publius served these guys. This is amazing. This guy's not even a Christian, but he has this heart of benevolence. But what makes this man's story even more remarkable is his own father was sick with dysentery and a fever. It's a gastric intestinal disease. It's actually called, they had a name for it, believe it or not, Malta Fever. And it was from a microbe in the goat's milk on Malta. They had a real problem for a couple of hundred years that they had trouble eradicating this problem. And so Malta fever was a really common problem, and it was often deadly. So here Publius, his family, granted he had servants and estate. He was not a poor man, but nonetheless he had his attention on his own father who was at, death's door. And he could have easily thought to himself, man, I got my own problems. Somebody else has got to step up, But again, here we've got Publius demonstrating the same giving heart. And in the midst of this, he takes care of all of these people while his own father is suffering. Here's the point I want to make briefly. Paul and Publius had a lot in common. They were coming from completely different experiences. Paul was a Jew, this man was a Roman. Paul was a prisoner, this man was a governor of the island. Paul had nothing, this man had an estate and all kinds of things. But both of these men were marked by a commonality. And it was simply this, that in the very midst of their crisis, they served other people. Isn't that interesting? That both of these men, facing an enormous personal crisis, served other people in the midst of that crisis. This is God. This is the Christian lifestyle. If you, or myself, if we only serve God when we're not in crisis, that just shoots about 80% of our life out the door, right? If we can only serve people when everything is good and when everything is how we need it, and we've got the sleep we need and the extra material goods that we need, and we got a little fat bank account, and all in our family realm of influence is all copacetic, and it's like everything is how we need it. At that moment, if we can serve, you're only going to be serving people about maybe 10 or 15% of your life. The example of these men is enormous, and I'm parking on it here just for a minute because I want to drive home the point strongly. Is that it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. Service is the call of the Christian. We should be serving people in the community. We should be looking for opportunity to give ourselves away. We need to be looking for opportunity to share the gospel. We need to be caring for and comforting others even as we are suffering, even as we are struggling, even when we don't know what to do next in our own life. Our hearts need to be completely opened up for the work of God to minister to other people. The thing I want to suggest to you with the Apostle Paul is that it wasn't just like, okay, I'll sacrifice. It was that these were opportunities that God brought to him. He didn't see these challenges in his life as obstacles. Instead, he saw them as opportunities. He saw them as opportunities that God would open up. He gets to serve all these guys on the boat, probably led a lot of them to Christ. They get to the beach, and he gets to share with the Maltese after he shakes the serpent off his hand. He's not crying, he's not bemoaning, where's God? How come he's not loving me? He must not be hearing my prayer. He just thinks, wow, this is a great opportunity. I just got bit by a snake. Lord, let me live so I can proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Are you following how this goes? You can live as a victim in your life and kind of bemoan that God's not taking care of you. Or you can say, wow, in the midst of the suffering, what an opportunity to bring glory to God. How can God, you use this the circumstance I'm in, that I don't even know how I'm going to get out of. I don't even know what the outcome is going to be. But God, bring it on. Let me be used by you for your glory.